The Defence Secretary said he was the victim of a hoax phone call. Ben Wallace says an imposter posing as the Ukrainian Prime Minister was able to reach him on the telephone. Announcing the news on Twitter, he described the move as Russian dirty tricks. Priti Patel said it was a pathetic attempt to divide us. An inquiry is now underway. Rescue workers are continuing to search for survivors after a theatre in the Ukrainian city of Mariupol was hit by an airstrike. The number of casualties is still unknown, but it's thought hundreds of people were sheltering inside at the time. A satellite image before the strike appeared to show the word children written in Russian on the pavement. Moscow has denied its involvement in the shelling. Meanwhile, Mariupol City Council says around 30,000 people have now managed to leave the besieged city. It comes as the Red Cross called on Russia to allow civilians a safe passage out and for aid to be brought in. Ukrainian officials say over 350,000 people are still sheltering there. And the first family selfie has been released showing Nazanin Zaghari-Ratcliffe, her husband Richard, and 7-year-old daughter Gabriella. The image was posted by the family's MP, Tulip Siddiq. She described the couple as relentless in their pursuit of justice, revealing they'd already raised the plight of another detainee in Iran, Morad Tabaz. Nazin returned to the UK in the early hours of this morning after being detained for 6 years in Iran. Well, on TV, online and DAB+ radio, this is GB News. Now it's back to Mark Steyn in Ukraine.
The Mark Steyn Show, live from Western Ukraine. War is hell, lest you doubt me. May I present the Speaker of the United States House of Representatives.
Later at the lunch, just maybe you might want to watch, I'm going to be reading a poem written by Bono about Ukraine, which you might find interesting.
I don't think so. I don't think I'll find it in the least bit interesting. As the fourth week of this war begins, let me give you my general take. I know President Zelensky drives a lot of you bonkers. No one had heard of him a month ago, and now he's the most famous head of government on the planet. I mean, can you name this new guy who purports to be Chancellor of Germany, or the fellow who's been Prime Minister of Australia for a couple of years, whatever it is now? But Zelensky, in his figure-hugging T-shirt, which was attacked on Twitter by Peter Schiff, who was on this show a couple of weeks ago. Attacked very ill-advisedly, I feel, because it's a bit like Gandhi's loincloth. It's part of his legend now. Anyway, the T-shirted Zelensky has spoken to the European Parliament and the United States Congress, to the House of Commons at Westminster and at Ottawa. He zooms it in and the crowd goes wild and they ooh and ah and ooh and ah. And at the end, none of them give him anything he's asked for. And it doesn't matter because he doesn't need it. Because the Ukrainians are winning this war without a no-fly zone, which is just as well, because if all these boots on the ground types like Lindsey Graham and Mitt Romney had their way and turned it into a full-blown American-led NATO mission, then undoubtedly it would turn into a quagmire for 20 years and fail, just like in Afghanistan. The Russians are having an incredibly bad war. They assume that their troops would just sweep across the country, install a puppet regime in Kiev, and that would be that. But that's not going to happen now because Zelensky is too famous. So unless they can get close enough to him to kill him, he's here to stay. Will they? Well, so far they're the ones who are actually losing all the big shots. According to Moscow, 4 of their major generals have died in the last 3 weeks. I want to make sure I get their names right. Sukhevetsky, Gerasimov, Kolesnikov and Mitayev. The Ukrainians claim a 5th major general is dead. Now, the Russians sent 20 major generals into Ukraine. So according to whether you believe the Kremlin or Kiev, between 20 and 25% of those major generals, those Russian major generals, are dead. That's an extraordinarily high rate of attrition, and it's because they're having to lead from the front because the Russian troops are demoralized and ineffective and keep trying to run away. Meanwhile, the Ukrainians report that some 13,000 Russian troops are dead. The US says, no, it's more like 7,000. I wouldn't take either of those at face value. And in fact, I'm more inclined to believe the Americans are the liars because they've been lying about an awful lot of things, those pathetic figures at the Pentagon with all their medals from shoulder down to below their dangly bits. But the lower figure means that 5% of Russia's invasion force have died. And that too is extraordinary because that's twice as high as the total number of American, British and Allied deaths in Afghanistan over 20 years. 3,500. In fact, it's more or less equivalent to total deaths in Afghanistan and Iraq combined, and the Russians have ramped that up in just 3 weeks. I mentioned a couple of days ago that I was here trying to get food to a place I wanted to revisit for sentimental reasons, just in case it was the last time I'd have a chance to, and to do that by staying one step ahead of Russian troops. We had air raid sirens a couple of days ago, but the word from people hither and yon is that it's getting easier to stay one step ahead of the Russian troops because those Russian troops are stalled and in some places in serious retreat. How many Russian major generals will die in this fourth week? How many more poor bloody infantrymen will die in this next week? I mentioned yesterday the most striking feature of all the Ukrainians I've spoken to, the cold contempt. Very unusual in a war zone, in my experience, the cold contempt for what Putin is doing. So what are they going to do now? Are they going to go full scorched earth as they did in Grozny a couple of decades back? This isn't to do with whether you like Zelensky or you've got a buddy of Hunter Biden who's landed you a pretty sweet gig as a non-executive director with Burisma or whatever. It's to do with the facts on the ground, and the facts on the ground are that the Russian advance has ceased to advance. Today was a beautiful day in this part of Ukraine, and I spent almost all of it on the streets with Ukrainians from all over the country. When did you leave Kiev?
We live in Brovary, not far from Kiev, approximately 20 minutes from Kiev.
Okay, and did you get out because of the war?
To be honest, no, because when the war started, me and my family were in vacation.
Oh.
Yes, and but all flights were cancelled.
Right.
That's why Fly Dubai changed our tickets another day to Poland. Oh. So we fly to Poland, and now we left my 3 children with my grandma in Czech Republic. But me and my husband decided to come back because his father in Kiev region on occupied territory, and he is not alone. He is with 4 dogs and cat. And when it was a possibility to evacuate him, he refused because of dogs. And now we have come back here and to find people who can help us to take him away from here with their pets. And we are looking for a place where he can stay for a while.
And then will you go back to the Czech Republic to your children?
I am not sure yet. Probably I would back, but my husband would stay. But no, you know, now we have a time when it's quite difficult to plan something for a long time. We try to manage with our problem step by step. If we decide one problem, we are happy, and then we think what to do further.
That's the way to solve the problems. How do you think the war is going? Because the Russians seem to be stuck, and they can't seem, everyone thought the Russians would win quickly, and the Ukrainians have pushed them back. Do you think the war is going well for Ukraine?
I strongly believe that one day we win. And I absolutely support that our position to stay on our territory and to stay with Western world.
Yep.
It is really important for us because we nobody want to be a part of Russia directly or not directly, but nobody wanted again. So I absolutely support our cause. I believe that one day we win, but unfortunately I'm not expert to say how long it is going on.
But you think Ukraine is part of the West and you want to stay part of the West?
Yes, exactly.
Thank you very much, Irena. Best of luck with your father and the dogs and cats to you. Best of luck to you. Yeah, I was sitting in a cafe earlier today and I heard a Ukrainian version of You Don't Own Me, the Leslie Gore boffo hit from the 1960s. You Don't Own Me. That's basically their message to Putin, who thought that Ukraine was still Little Russia, as Russians have thought of it for centuries, and it's turned out not to be true. Not for him. In almost any part of this country does Ukraine think of itself as Little Russia. Inna Sovsun is a Ukrainian MP and former education minister, and we're always glad to see her on this show, and she joins us now. Inna, you're privy to more information than the people I've been talking to on the streets, but the war has gone very badly for the Russians, hasn't it?
Well, we are happy to state this fact. Yes, it is not going well for them. They are not managing to proceed closer to the big cities, neither to Kharkiv, neither to Kiev. Actually, in the last 2 days, there has been a counteroffensive of the Ukrainian army in the northwest of Kiev. That is why the basically 2 days curfew was announced in the city because of the major fightings. And apparently Ukrainian army is pushing them further on the northwest where they were only holding ground. That was the only place where they managed to capture the ground. So it is going well for the Ukrainian army, apart from the situation on the sky. That is the only, where they have the superiority, and they use it by bombarding civilians heavily.
Yes, they seem to have adopted a strategy such as in Mariupol, where they've reduced 90% of the town to rubble. And that too, in a sense, reveals that Putin doesn't think he can win, because if he really thought he could win, he wouldn't just be destroying everything he can. So they're attacking theatres, they're attacking kindergartens, but that's not the strategy you'd use if you thought you could seriously win this war, is it?
Precisely. He is definitely not driven by a specific strategy. He is driven by his rage, by his hatred, by his emotions. So there is no clear strategy. What we are seeing in this war is that this Russian army, which Putin was so proud to call the second biggest and strongest army in the world, is just a paper tiger, which can only resort to atrocities against civilians. But it is basically unable to fight against the much better prepared Ukrainian army. And that is something that Putin didn't expect. And frankly speaking, the West didn't expect that Ukrainian army will be fighting so heavily. But Russian army is not able to make a specific, any significant advance. And there are some cases where they are just making stupid things, which we are grateful for, of course. But there is this case, and there are many jokes about that. In the southern Ukraine, there is an airport called Chornobayevka, and they keep on landing their helicopters there 4 times in a row. Ukrainian artillery is shelling those helicopters. They clean the helicopters that have been destroyed by the Ukrainian artillery, and then they land other helicopters on the very same spot. This is just, stupidity. Yeah. I don't know, they're drunk or anything, but we are grateful. Keep on doing that. We appreciate the effort.
Yes, and it's the same thing, I think, with all these major generals who've been killed. If the war was going well, you wouldn't have your generals leading from the front. But the generals, because generally speaking, it's hard to knock off a general even in the middle of a battle, at least in the modern era. But these Russian generals have to keep going to the very front to try and persuade their men to stiffen themselves and get into the fight. That's not a sign of a disciplined fighting machine, is it?
No, precisely. And apparently there is a very strong problem with morale in the Russian army. Well, from what we are hearing from the areas which they occupied, is that the first thing the Russian soldiers do is they go to the next supermarket and they grab all the alcohol they can find there. They they get drunk. They are refusing to go to the fight. Many of them are trying to find ways to do some harm to himself so that he will be, taken back to Mother Russia and not go into fight. So that is the situation in the Russian army. They are not motivated. The morale is low. And that is why apparently many generals need to get into fight directly. And just right now, like 20 minutes ago, I read that one of the generals that was killed, I think, today or yesterday. Now, that feels like a great revenge for the Ukrainian people, because apparently one of the generals killed was the general that did kill hundreds of Ukrainian soldiers in the war in 2014. So now we got a revenge of the Russian general who was responsible for many, many deaths here. He got killed here in Ukraine now.
Yes, you have to say, if 25% of Russia's major generals get killed in Ukraine, they're going to run out of major generals pretty soon. There's Ukrainian soldiers and reservists all over the country. You see them and they're very friendly, and I quite like to go up and chat to them when I get the chance. And one of them told me today, just to go back to what you were saying, that he'd heard stories where Russian infantrymen are actually, shooting themselves in the foot or in the leg in order that they can be evacuated back to Russia and they don't have to be here anymore.
That is true. And there was a story about a couple of days ago, 5 or 6 days ago, with the Russian soldiers, Navy, that was 600 people who were supposed to land from the ship on the south, and 600 refused to do that. They were sent back to Russia, and the next 600 came. And then those 600 that came instead were killed, basically like 500 out of them. So I believe that the first 600 who left were feeling pretty lucky. They are under investigation right now and so on, but they're alive. But the 600 who came, basically all of them, except for several of them, were killed. And of course, Russian soldiers hearing those stories, well, that is logical thing to do. There is very little logical about Russians, but still, everyone wants to leave. So they are just refusing to fight.
Well, it's amazing because the United States and NATO, it took 20 years in Afghanistan for it to end as a fiasco. And the Russians seem to be reaching the fiasco stage in super quick time in just 3 weeks. Inna, it's always great to speak with you. Stay safe where you are, and we'll check in again very soon. Thank you very much. Inna, as you know, sits in the Ukrainian parliament, which isn't sitting at this moment, of course. We'll come back with your thoughts and lots more voices from the streets of Ukraine. Straight ahead, don't touch that dial.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before. Basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hey, welcome back to the Mark Steyn Show on GB News, coming to you from Ukraine. If you look at the people behind me, this seems like a happy, normal town full of bustling townsfolk. In fact, these folks are almost entirely not from this town. They're refugees from other parts of Ukraine, from Kiev and from Kharkiv and from lots of other parts of this country, trying to stay one step ahead of Russian troops. Do you live here?
No, I'm from Kiev.
Okay.
I left Kiev maybe 2 weeks ago with my family, and we live in village near this city.
So just you live in a small village near here, and are you staying here until the war is over?
Yes. We live in my wife's parents, and wait when war finished. We can go to repair our house.
So your house is still in Kiev, and
yes, a flat. We live with my wife in flat, and my parents live near Kiev, in village, in house.
Okay. And how do you think the war is going? It's going badly for the Russians?
For us, very badly. I think Russians become a very closely country when war ends. And Russia go to in time on 20 or 30 years ago.
Right.
Return in the past.
So you think Russia's gone back to the Soviet days?
Yeah, come back in period of Soviet Union without products in normal and another social things.
Without any international connections.
Yeah, without international connections, no tourism, no money in this country.
And no shops full of merchandise.
Yeah. A lot of international companies which work in Russia stop work, and I think a very long time will not return in Russia.
Now, Putin thinks Ukraine is Russian, and a lot of Ukrainians think Ukraine is European and look west. And you don't want to go back and be part of some new Soviet empire of Putin's.
Yes, Putin thinks that we are not a Ukrainian country, we are a part of Soviet Union.
Yeah.
But if we see a history of Ukraine, we will see that Ukraine in every time tried to become independent, and we know that we are Ukrainian, we are a freedom country.
So when he says that there's no such thing as Ukraine and that you're all Russians, you say, go to hell, Putin, you're not interested?
I don't want to help that Putin help to us.
Yeah.
We can live without Putin and Russia.
And we'll have some more voices from the streets of Ukraine in just a moment. Let's get to your comments. Ella says, I see you in Ukraine, interviewing people, providing empathy. What I haven't seen yet is proof positive of Russian crimes. What I see is Parliament reporting on Russian war crimes, with the caveat we cannot confirm. What are we supposed to think, Mark? Well, for a start, Parliament doesn't report on crimes. It's not the police blotter of your local newspaper. And in fact, if you mean that you like to hear it from political leaders, a remarkable number of them, starting with Joe Biden, somebody read it into his ear for him to say into a microphone that Putin is a war criminal. But this idea, by the way, that I find this slightly odd, that it doesn't count as a war crime unless you're aware of it, Ella. Putin's invaded the country, so he shouldn't have done that. That's the first crime. Secondly, there have been too many strikes on civilian targets. In fact, basically, in the last few days, nothing but strikes on civilian targets, which, as General Riley explained yesterday, happens in war, and occasionally you're trying to hit a military base and instead you drop the bomb on the hospital. Instead, famously, in Kosovo, Bill Clinton dropped a bomb down the chimney of the Chinese embassy, I think it was, in Belgrade. So these things can happen, but they don't happen all the time the way the Russians are doing it. And in fact, Ella, since you say this, I don't want to pick on you, Ella, but this whole thing is, I haven't seen any evidence of war crime. Well, if you actually go on the internet, you'll see drone footage of a man driving along the street and he sees a Russian tank coming towards him. So he stops because he doesn't want to be hit by the tank. He doesn't want the tank to fire at him if he keeps going. So he stops the car, he gets out the car with his hands up, and the Russians shoot him dead. And it's disturbing footage. I didn't play it last night, Ella, precisely for this reason, but I get pretty testy about people talking about war crimes because you can just see one there. Because you can see the soldiers, he's got his hands up, he's a civilian, and the Russian troops, because they're nervous and crap, which is a dangerous combination when you're armed, shoot him dead, and his body is lying in the street. So at a certain level, Ella, if you haven't seen proof of Russian crimes, and as I say, the original crime is the invasion of a sovereign state, but if you haven't seen proof of Russian crimes, it's because you're choosing not to look on it. And if you want to dispute it, that's fine, and when I come back next week, we'll play you that disturbing Russian drone clip. But thank you for your question anyway. Robert says, Mark, what has been your favourite part of Ukraine so far? Well, as I always say, my favourite bits tend to be bits like Transcarpathia and the Bukovina, and I have a personal connection with Odessa, which one branch of my family came from very long ago. They're not there now, but the earliest photos in my family scrapbook are from Odessa. And I understand there are conflicting views of that. Basically, during the Tsarist Empire, Russians thought of Odessa as their southern capital. And I use the phrase little Russians. And there were people, in the same way that in Ireland, you'll still hear people talked about in Ireland as a West Britain, meaning that they're people who feel as comfortable in Dublin, in London as in Dublin, and from an Irish nationalist point of view, are too comfortable in London and not expressive enough of their Irish identity. And actually some very famous people that we think of as Russian are in fact from Ukraine. So that, you take a brilliant writer such as Gogol, and as I always say, if you don't know who Gogol is, Google Gogol. And if that doesn't work, Gogol Google. But Gogol actually wrote the all-time greatest short story, The Overcoat. That's why I'm wearing one, not because it's 15 below freezing, but because I'm honouring Gogol's great short story, The Overcoat. I've forgotten what point I was making now, but it was a big one. Yeah, Gogol thought of himself as a little Russian. He was actually from Ukraine, but he wanted to make it big in St. Petersburg. That's an almost extinct species now, because even the Russian speakers in Ukraine are disgusted by what the Russian army has been doing these last 3 weeks. Jesse says, will you bring back some Ukrainian liquor? Yes, I will, but I'm going to drink it all myself, so you're not getting any, Jesse. Tough on that. As you know, the great migrations are underway every few years now. In fact, there's not really a break in between, but so far, over 3 million people, it may in fact tickle 4 million in the next day or two. Almost all women and children have left Ukraine. Poland's taken 2 million. Hungary is now up around 300,000. Now, Hungary has a population of less than 10 million. So that's the equivalent of the United Kingdom taking over 2 million refugees from Ukraine. Joel Sterling Brown is just a few miles away from me, I think in that direction, in Mukachevo, and he's actually hosting a lot of refugees, and he joins me now. Joel, it's great to have you with us. You got into the refugee, you didn't expect to be getting into the refugee housing business.
No, Mark, I did not. 3 weeks ago, I was a pastor of a church of 65. And now we host more than 500 people every night.
And have they come from all over Ukraine? I know you have ones from Kiev and Kharkiv, but they're from other parts of the country too.
Oh, they're from the entire country, and as you said, most of them are finding their way into Europe. Most people stay 1 day, 2 days, up to 3. But really, 300 people we get new every single day as there's just this turnover of people going to borders.
And where are most of them headed? Because this is slightly different from what we've seen in the last couple of years with the Syrian refugees in Germany and the Syrian refugees in Sweden. I don't get the sense from the people I've spoken to, even if they're going to Slovakia or Poland, they look on it as just a temporary stay until they can return and see if their apartment is still there.
Well, yeah, most of the people have a lot of faith in the Ukrainian army, and the phrase that you hear a lot is, we'll be back when we win. And so most of them are just trying to find temporary shelter. Since Ukraine has had a lot of people that travel for work, a lot of times what happens is people come into our city to catch their breath before they move on, as they call relatives or people they know, to find where they can find a place to hole up until things change.
And are most of them in good spirits? I'm struck by the underneath the horror at what some of them have seen in the destruction of property, and some of them have seen deaths of young people and all the rest of it. But they seem driven by a very basic, unabashed love of country that you don't see in a lot of Western nations so much anymore.
Ukrainians are an amazing people, and a lot of that patriotism or that love of country comes after the Maidan revolution that happened several years ago, where Ukraine very quickly threw off a lot of that Soviet roots that it still held on, and in a lot of ways just embraced freedom. One of the mantras that people live by is that freedom is our religion. And so there are people that love their freedom and love life, which is one of the reasons why the invasion is so difficult, because you have a regime that is now closing in on its people and taking their freedom away, and you have people that are just enjoying and loving the country that has lifted their spirits in the last few years.
Yeah, no one wants to go back to being Kremlin slaves. Just tell us, you fell in love with a nice Ukrainian girl, and that's why you're here. But you also fell in love with Ukraine too.
16 years ago, I was given an opportunity to come to Kiev to work with a church there, and I ended up staying a lot longer than I expected. And I knew that I didn't want to leave. And then I met my wife. Both of my children were born here. And I've been here for 16 years. This is more home than anywhere else. And that's one of the reasons that we stay, is because where do we go and where is home? And if our city is a city of refuge, then we need to do what we can to help people. Because what can I say if I leave and then I come back later when it's safer? And if this is my home, then I stay here and I give that place of safety for others.
And I take it that when you talk about that, you have a US passport and you could get your family out. You could be gone you could be gone and over the border in a couple of hours. But you feel that out of solidarity with the Ukrainian people, you have to stay.
Absolutely, out of solidarity with them, and I could leave, and I do have my passports, and my kids have their passports, but in truth, I don't know that it would. What message would it send? I'm a pastor of a church, and I talk about the love of God and the peace that He brings, and I talk about what that is for our life. And if I turn in fear, what does that do for my message? This is the moment where I think for a lot of people, the things that they preach are going to be shown in their actions.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it, that this tests your commitment to your faith, because it's
very much so.
Not just something you peddle in the pulpit every Sunday or whatever. It's something that you have to live even when the consequences become tougher. Well, I'm sure these refugees appreciate it. One of the things that's striking to me is the ease with which hospitality is offered and accepted here, and everyone seems to be, even though they miss their homes, they seem to be enjoying the people they're meeting along the way and the sense of solidarity that comes with it.
Yeah, I think that we're all working together, and I think one of the things that we really try to focus on is so many people want to talk about the tragedy of it and the horror of it. But honestly, what we try to do is we try to show hope. And I think that hope is infectious. And when they come to a place, when they can finally catch their breath and there's hope, that they receive that and then they spread that hope along.
Well, that's a good note on which to end there, Joel. You're doing the Lord's work in difficult times, and I'm sure it's appreciated by this huge turnover of people, 300 people every day. Let's hope they'll be able to go back to their homes very soon. By the way, I should add that this is slightly different from, as I said, from the so-called millions of refugees that were taken in Germany and Sweden and other countries just 5 years ago, whatever it was. There may be another wave of those coming, because those refugees were prompted by the chaos and implosion that happened in the Middle East and North Africa following the Lehman Brothers global economy downturn, which actually just put up the price of bread. It was as basic as that. The price of bread rose in Egypt, and people couldn't afford it, and they got rid of Mubarak over that because they couldn't afford a crust of bread. And one of the consequences of Putin waging war in Ukraine, whose main principal destination for wheat exports, is the breadbasket of the world, is Egypt, is that there are going to be a lot of disturbances and turbulence and maybe even revolutions elsewhere around the world. War and revolution. The instability will spread. We're coming right back. The Mark Steyn Show, live from Ukraine on GB News. Stick around.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before. Basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Coming up on Dan Wootton Tonight, after revealing he's willing to testify against Meghan in the legal battle between his daughters, what family skeletons might Thomas Markle reveal in their courtroom showdown? He sits down for his first interview since launching his headline-making YouTube channel. Why on earth are the left now calling Russell Brand a conspiracy theorist for questioning the mainstream media narrative? Social media sensation and free speech champion Zuby tackles that. Plus, GB News host Mark Dolan will sound off on the big issues dominating the headlines, and I'll break down the day's top stories with my superstar panel. Star Daily Mail columnist Sarah Vine, conservative commentator Dominique Samuels, and author and journalist Amy Nicole. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News.
Welcome back, the Mark Steyn Show on GB News. Here are 3 generations of a Ukrainian family I met earlier. What's happening to your home and your business and your life back in Kiev? Have you just left your home? Did you all live together?
Yes, we live together.
And so you just left your house or your apartment?
I left my house. We left our 2 cats, but my friend of mine with her family, they moved to my apartment with their dog, and they stay in there, in my apartment.
And is the dog getting on with the cats?
It doesn't matter already. They have to.
They have to coexist.
Yeah.
That's a very peace-minded statement to make. If only the rest of the world could get along like your 2 cats and the visiting dog. And how long do you think you're going to be here before you'll be able to go back to Kiev?
I think maybe 1 month.
Maybe 1 month. That's good.
We hope by the end of April, maybe it will be finished.
Right. And how do you think it will finish? You don't want Ukraine to be basic.
I hope Kiev and countryside of Kiev will stay like it's now, not damaged badly. We hope so.
And you don't want to be, you know, the way the Russians talk about Ukraine as Little Russia. You don't want to be Little Russia.
No, we are not Russia, no.
And you don't want the Donbass or the Crimea or the Bukovina or anywhere to be part of Russia?
I think that people's life is above all, and we have to, if Crimea is not Ukraine anymore, so okay, but just leave us alive.
That's three ladies I met on the streets of Ukraine earlier. What's behind this whole thing, though? Harold James is with Princeton University, and he has a very interesting piece on China and Russia in The Spectator. Harold, is China in the position where it can't afford to have Vladimir Putin lose this war as badly as he seems to be losing it right now?
Well, it's great to be with you, Mark, first of all. It's a great show. I really appreciate your work in Ukraine. I think the Chinese position is changing very, very quickly, very rapidly. I'm sure that if the Russian offensive had gone as it was intended by Vladimir Putin, and if there had been a puppet regime in Kiev very quickly, and if then the territorial arrangements were changed and Ukraine was annexed to Russia in effect, China would have been extremely happy, and it would have seen this as a way of dealing with Taiwan. But as it goes on, it's more and more of an embarrassment for Xi. President Xi, I think, is really absolutely shocked by what is happening and by the real appalling demonstration of the ineffectiveness of Russia as a big power. And it seems to me that Xi is repositioning himself now. You've heard over the last 24 hours, I think, really rather positive comments from Chinese spokesmen about Ukraine. And they're going to play those up, I think, over the next weeks, because like anybody, China wants to be on the winning side. And I think Ukraine is clearly winning this. It's winning the military conflict. It's winning the war of ideas. And China just can't afford to be shackled to what, in effect, is looking like an international pariah, a bloody, autocratic, fascist regime. China can't afford to do that.
Yes, it's interesting because China's genius these last few years has been that it's been able to go to almost every corner of the planet, snaffling up the world without firing a shot. So it hasn't thought as a conventional empire in that sense, even if it has imperial ambitions, whereas Russia just sort of barging in, blowing things up, must seem monumentally stupid to Chairman Xi and the Politburo.
Yes, absolutely. China doesn't work in the way that empires worked in the 19th century. It doesn't work in the way that the United States worked after the Second World War. It doesn't have allies, really. Russia is the closest that it comes to having an ally. But it's dependent on these trade routes. And one of them goes through Central Asia and then through Ukraine to Europe, to Hungary. There's enormous Chinese investment in Budapest, enormous Chinese investment in Belgrade. And all of that is put at risk. And China is really very, very dependent on a world economy that does business and buys, frankly, Chinese goods.
We used to talk in the colonial days and in the Cold War about proxy wars, where the big powers would have some little miniature factions fighting for their interests. In some strange way, though, can China lose? Because Russia is being driven into being a Chinese client state the more it gets excluded from the rest of the world. And in a certain sense, the United States is wary of crossing China. So as a sort of US-Russian potential conflict, China would kind of win either way?
Well, I think China is really the key to this this situation, and you've probably also seen that Joe Biden is going to talk with Xi tomorrow. That's going to be a really fascinating discussion. But I think the signs are really that China is trying to disengage from Russia. It's a complicated situation because I believe that there are many people in China, many people in the Chinese governing elite as well, that see Russia as a wonderful symbol of resistance to American domination. And there's something about standing up to the United States and being offensive in Europe that gets the admiration of Chinese people. But when it's done this crudely, this badly, this ineffectively, it's counterproductive.
There were people who suggested when this invasion began that if it went well, it would embolden the Chinese with respect to Taiwan. I wasn't sure about that because I think they're on their own timeline and they don't really take things like that into account. But I was wondering whether you think this would make him more cautious now about moving against Taiwan.
Undoubtedly, it's the story that Taiwan is part of China is a critical central belief of every Chinese government since the revolution. So the aim is very clear that they want to take over Taiwan in some way. But the question is how that is done. And what this is showing is that doing it in a military way is going to be ineffective. I mean, if you think that the invasion of Ukraine is going badly, you just think how more complicated the invasion of a well-defended island is, where it requires a very close coordination of the Navy and the Air Force and paratroop landings. And it's really shown, I think, what you've been seeing on the streets in Ukraine, the resistance of the Ukrainian people to this kind of invasion would be equally what was taking place on the streets in Taipei and in the rest of Taiwan. So it's making a military solution less likely. And what are the other alternatives? I mean, maybe as these societies evolve in 100 years' time, they will lose their ideological differences. But it's really put, I think, the end to trying to do it by force.
That's very interesting, Harold, and we thank you for that. Harold James from Princeton University on the Chinese role and the analogy between Russia, Ukraine, and China, Taiwan. I think we've just got time for a couple of quick stumpy stumps on Stump the Steyn. Oh, someone says, do you think our MPs are being directed by the World Economic Forum? Look, one of the reasons I find Ukraine very appealing is because they're fighting for their country and they love their country. It doesn't matter whether other people love their country. I mean, the English have, the Scottish have problems with the English and the English have problems with the Irish and everyone has problems with the Welsh. But when people actually love their own countries for their countries, that is a heartening sight, and it's better than those weird, attenuated globalists from Klaus Schwab and the other shape-shifting lizards at the World Economic Forum. Dan Wootton is going to thump your Thursday like nobody does. That is it from me, Dan, standing by. Stay safe, stay free. And join us next week for more on The Mark Steyn Show.
Good evening. If you like blue skies, well, you're in for a treat. For the next couple of days, most of us will see plenty of sunshine. But early on tomorrow, could be quite foggy, and certainly it will be a chilly old start. This weakening weather front has brought a few showers through the day and still a few around this evening across parts of Scotland, but high pressure is moving in, and this will dominate our weather through Friday and Saturday. As I said, still 1 or 2 showers over the Highlands, the Northern Isles, the Western Isles, steadily fading overnight. For most, it's a dry evening, a dry and clear night. Fog is likely to form over parts of the Midlands, Wales and southern England. Could be quite dense in places as well. Further north, staying largely clear. It's here where we will get fairly extensive frost, but even further south, it's a cold start to Friday, especially if you've got the fog, quite a grey start for some, and it may take a while for that fog to clear, certainly likely to linger through the morning rush hour. But once it's gone from late morning, it's generally a fine and sunny day up and down the land. Plenty of blue sky, a bit of a breeze picking up once more in the northwest. Temperatures here 8 to 10, but elsewhere, look at that, widely into the teens. 16, 17 and 18 is just about possible. The sun is getting stronger and stronger at the moment. It will turn quite cold quite quickly during tomorrow evening under those clear skies. We're not going to have as much fog around, and it won't be quite as frosty because there'll be more of a breeze blowing, and that breeze will be a feature of the weather through the weekend. Yes, lots of sunshine on Saturday, almost wall-to-wall sunshine in fact, but there will be a stronger wind picking up across southern England, South Wales, Northern Ireland and western Scotland in particular. So that will make it feel a little cooler on Saturday, but temperatures still widely in that sunshine into the mid-teens, well above average for the time of year. Probably a warmer day across the northwest of Scotland. Sunday, still dry and bright for the vast majority, but cloudier, a little colder, and some showers are possible across East Anglia and the southeast.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before. It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and